Hey guys, imagine waking up every morning at 4:30, not to your alarm, but to a housekeeper banging on your door with a wooden spoon. Your first task of the day is carrying a bucket of freezing water up 3 flights of stairs while your knees creak like old floorboards. By the time you reach the top, your arms feel like they're about to fall off, and you haven't even started scrubbing the fireplace yet. That fireplace, by the way, is covered in a layer of ash so thick it looks like someone dumped an entire barbecue pit inside the house. And the smell? It's like sticking your face into a chimney that's been marinating in damp soot for weeks. If you think your morning routine is hard, try doing all of that before the sun even thinks about coming up. If you're enjoying this historical reality check, hit that like button and subscribe for more. I'm genuinely curious to know where you're watching from, so tell me in the comments where you are and what time it is right now. So let's step into the world of a Victorian maid and see exactly why you wouldn't last a single day. Your day begins in a room so small you could touch both walls if you stretched out your arms. The ceiling is low enough that if you sat up too quickly in bed, you'd whack your head on the wooden beam above you. There's no heating, no insulation, just bare walls and a single thin blanket that feels like it's made from old potato sacks. The mattress beneath you is stuffed with straw, and over the months it's compressed into something resembling a lumpy pancake. Every time you roll over, bits of straw poke through the fabric and jab you in the ribs. You wake up with mysterious red marks all over your arms and back, souvenirs from whatever's living in that straw. It's not just uncomfortable, it's like trying to sleep on a bed made entirely of toothpicks. The room is freezing, properly freezing, the kind of cold that makes your fingers go numb even when you're tucked under that sad excuse for a blanket. Your breath comes out in visible puffs, like you're sleeping in a poorly insulated shed. There's frost on the inside of the tiny window, a thin layer of ice that somehow formed overnight. You'd think a window would let in fresh air, but all it does is whistle and rattle with every gust of wind. The noise is relentless, a constant low hum that sounds like someone's blowing across the top of a bottle right next to your ear. By the time winter rolls around, you're basically living in a fancy freezer with a door. Getting dressed is an ordeal. You've got layers upon layers of clothing to wrestle into, and none of it is designed for comfort. There's a long dress made of rough cotton that scratches against your skin like sandpaper. Over that goes an apron, starched so stiff it could probably stand up on its own. The collar sits high and tight around your neck, digging into your throat every time you bend down or turn your head. There's no elastic, no stretchy fabric, just buttons and ties and fastenings that take forever to do up. Your fingers are still numb from the cold, so every button is a tiny battle. By the time you're fully dressed, you're already exhausted, and you haven't even left the room yet. The shoes are perhaps the worst part of the outfit. They're hard leather, completely unyielding, and they fit like they were designed for someone else's feet entirely. There's no left or right shoe, just 2 identical lumps of stiff material that you're expected to wear for the next 16 hours. Within the first hour of walking, you can feel the beginnings of blisters forming on your heels. By midday, every step is a sharp reminder that your feet exist, and they're very unhappy about it. Modern trainers with cushioned soles and breathable fabric. Forget it. You're clomping around in what feels like 2 small wooden boats strapped to your feet. Once you're dressed, you head downstairs to start your duties. The staircase is narrow and steep, and there's barely any light to see by. The candle you're carrying flickers and threatens to go out with every step, casting weird shadows on the walls. The stairs creak under your weight, each one making a different noise like a badly tuned musical instrument. You're trying to be quiet because waking the family is absolutely forbidden, but every step sounds like you're tap dancing on a drum. The house is still dark, still silent, and you're creeping around like some sort of clumsy ghost. The kitchen, when you finally reach it, is the only warm room in the entire house. That's because the stove has been burning all night, keeping a low fire going for the morning. It's a massive iron contraption that takes up half the wall, radiating heat like a small furnace. In winter, this is the only place you'll feel your fingers again. In summer, it's like standing next to an open oven that someone's cranked up to maximum. There's no thermostat, no way to adjust the temperature, just a big hunk of metal that's either roasting you alive or providing blessed relief depending on the season. Your first job is to clear out the fireplace in the main sitting room. This involves getting down on your hands and knees with a small brush and shovel, scraping out all the ash and burnt wood from the previous day. The ash is fine and powdery, and the moment you disturb it, it poofs up into a cloud that gets absolutely everywhere. It coats your hands, your face, your apron, and somehow even gets into your mouth. The taste is bitter and chalky, like licking the inside of an ashtray that's been left out in the rain. You're trying not to breathe it in, but that's basically impossible when you're face first in a fireplace. By the time you're done, you look like you've been rolling around in a coal mine. Next, you have to lay a new fire. This means carrying in logs from the woodshed outside, which in winter means stepping out into the freezing morning air in your thin cotton dress. The logs are heavy, awkward, and covered in splinters. You stack them carefully in the fireplace, arranging kindling and paper underneath, then striking a match to get it going. If you do it wrong, the fire smokes and fills the room with a grey haze that makes your eyes sting. If you do it right, it catches quickly, and you can move on to the next task. Either way, your hands are now covered in splinters, ash, and the lingering smell of damp wood. The smell of damp wood, by the way, is everywhere. It's in the logs, in the walls, in the furniture. The whole house has a musty, slightly rotten odour that never quite goes away. It's like someone left a pile of wet laundry in a cupboard for a month and then decided to build a house around it. You stop noticing it after a while, but every time you come back from outside, it hits you all over again. It's the kind of smell that clings to your clothes and hair, a persistent reminder that nothing in this house is ever truly dry. After the fires are laid, you move on to hauling water. There's no running water in most of the house, so everything has to be carried up from the kitchen in heavy metal buckets. These buckets are filled to the brim, and they weigh about as much as a sack of potatoes. You're expected to carry 2 at once, one in each hand, climbing those same narrow, creaky stairs you came down earlier. The water sloshes and spills with every step, soaking your skirt and leaving a wet trail behind you. Your arms feel like they're being slowly pulled out of their sockets, and you're only halfway up the first flight. By the time you reach the top floor, you're gasping for breath, and your hands are cramping so badly you can barely let go of the handles. This water is for the wash basins in the bedrooms. Each room needs fresh water for washing, and the old water from yesterday needs to be carried back down and emptied. So you're essentially doing the same trip twice, once with full buckets and once with buckets full of scummy, soapy water that smells like yesterday's sweat. The old water has a greyish tinge, and sometimes bits of mystery debris floating in it. You're trying very hard not to think about what that debris might be. The bucket is heavy, the stairs are steep, and you're doing this multiple times before breakfast. Your modern gym membership has not prepared you for this. Speaking of breakfast, you don't get to eat until the family's been served and you've cleaned up after them. That means cooking, serving, and washing up before you even think about sitting down. The cooking is done on that massive iron stove, which has no temperature gauge and no timer. You just have to know, by instinct and experience, when something is done. Burnt toast is a daily occurrence. overcooked eggs are a given. The family expects everything to be perfect, but you're working with equipment that would make a modern chef weep. There's no toaster, no microwave, no electric kettle. Everything is done by hand, over an open flame, while you're already exhausted from hauling buckets and scrubbing fireplaces. Once the family has eaten, you're finally allowed to sit down for your own breakfast. This is not the hearty, Instagram-worthy meal you might be imagining. It's a bowl of porridge so thick you could use it to tile a bathroom. The oats have been boiled into a gluey paste that sticks to the roof of your mouth and refuses to go down without a fight. There's no sugar, no honey, no fresh fruit. If you're lucky, there might be a splash of milk, but it's more likely to be watered down to stretch it further. The taste is bland, bordering on non-existent, like eating wallpaper paste that someone vaguely waved a spoon at. You shovel it down because you need the energy, not because it's enjoyable in any way. The bread that comes with breakfast is dense and heavy, the kind that sits in your stomach like a brick. It's made from cheap flour and has the texture of a sponge that's been left out to dry. Chewing it is a workout for your jaw. There's a scraping of butter if you're fortunate, but more often it's just dry bread that sucks all the moisture out of your mouth. You wash it down with weak tea that tastes more like hot water, with a faint memory of tea leaves. It's not refreshing, it's not comforting, it's just wet and warm. You drink it because it's there, and because the alternative is nothing. After breakfast, the real work begins. The family's chamber pots need to be emptied. Yes, chamber pots. Those ceramic bowls that people relieve themselves into during the night, because getting up and walking to an outdoor privy in the dark was too much effort. Your job is to collect these pots from each bedroom, carry them downstairs, and empty them into the cesspit out back. The smell is eye-watering. It's a thick, sour stench that fills your nostrils and makes your stomach lurch. You're trying to hold your breath, but you can't hold it the entire way down 3 flights of stairs. Eventually you have to breathe, and when you do, you get a full lungful of what can only be described as Satan's potpourri. The cesspit itself is a hole in the ground covered with a wooden lid. You lift the lid, trying not to look inside, and pour the contents of the chamber pot into the murky depths below. The sound it makes is unspeakable, a wet sploosh that echoes slightly. The smell that rises up is even worse than what was in the pot, a concentrated fog of human waste that's been fermenting in the sun. You slam the lid back down as quickly as possible and retreat, but the stink clings to you. It's in your nose, on your hands, probably in your hair. You feel like you need a shower, but showers don't exist yet. The best you can do is rinse your hands in cold water and hope for the best. Back inside, it's time to start the laundry. Laundry in the modern sense means throwing clothes into a machine, adding detergent, and pressing a button. Laundry in the Victorian sense means filling a massive tub with water you've heated on the stove, adding soap shavings, and scrubbing every item by hand. The tub is made of wood and sits in the scullery, a small damp room that smells permanently of mildew. The water is scalding hot when you first pour it in, hot enough to turn your hands bright red. You're plunging your arms in up to the elbows, scrubbing sheets and shirts against a washboard that's basically a sheet of corrugated metal designed to shred fabric and skin in equal measure. The soap is harsh and alkaline, stripping the natural oils from your hands and leaving them dry and cracked. By the end of a week, your knuckles are raw and your fingertips are peeling. There's no moisturizer, no hand cream, just the constant cycle of wet and dry that leaves your hands looking like they belong to someone twice your age. The sheets are heavy when they're wet, almost impossible to wring out properly. You twist and squeeze, your arms shaking with the effort, and water drips everywhere, soaking your shoes and the floor beneath you. Once the laundry is washed, it needs to be hung out to dry. In summer, this is relatively straightforward. You carry the heavy basket of wet laundry out to the clothesline and peg everything up. The sun does the rest. In winter, however, drying laundry is a nightmare. There's no tumble dryer, no heated drying rack, just a line strung up in the kitchen where everything hangs limply, dripping onto the floor and filling the room with damp, musty air. It takes days for things to dry, and in the meantime, the kitchen smells like wet dog mixed with old socks. You're constantly dodging sheets and shirts as you try to cook, and occasionally you walk face first into a damp pillowcase that slaps you like a cold, wet fish. After laundry, it's time to clean the main rooms of the house. This involves sweeping, dusting and polishing every surface until it gleams. The floors are wooden and need to be swept every day because the house is constantly full of dirt, tracked in from outside. There are no doormats, no shoe racks, just people walking in with muddy boots and leaving a trail of filth behind them. You're down on your hands and knees with a brush and dustpan, sweeping up crumbs, dirt, ash and the occasional dead insect. The brush is made of stiff bristles that scrape against the floorboards, making a harsh scratching sound that sets your teeth on edge. Dusting is a never-ending battle. The house is full of ornaments, picture frames, and decorative nonsense that serves no purpose other than to collect dust. You've got a feather duster that's supposed to make the job easier, but all it really does is move the dust around. You wave it over a shelf, and a cloud of fine grey particles poofs into the air, only to settle back down moments later. You're supposed to dust every surface every day, but it feels completely pointless, because by tomorrow, it'll all be dusty again. The air itself seems to be made of dust, a perpetual haze that tickles your nose and makes you sneeze at the most inconvenient moments. Polishing the furniture is another marathon task. Every wooden surface needs to be rubbed with beeswax until it shines. This involves applying the wax, buffing it in with a cloth and then buffing it again to remove any streaks. Your arm moves in endless circles, round and round, until your shoulder aches and your wrist feels like it might fall off. The wax has a sweet, slightly cloying smell that's pleasant at first, but becomes overwhelming after an hour of continuous polishing. It gets under your fingernails and leaves a residue on your hands that's impossible to wash off completely. The dining room is particularly fiddly because it's full of silverware that needs polishing. Forks, spoons, knives, serving dishes, candlesticks. All of it tarnishes constantly and needs to be cleaned. You use a special polish that smells like metal and chemicals, rubbing each piece until it shines. The polish leaves dark grey smudges on the cloth, evidence of the tarnish you're removing. Your fingers are grey by the end of it, and no amount of scrubbing seems to get them completely clean. The silver looks beautiful when you're done, but you know it'll start tarnishing again within days. It's like painting a fence that never stays painted. While you're cleaning, you're expected to be invisible. If a member of the family enters the room, you're supposed to stop what you're doing, step aside, and keep your eyes down. You're not to speak unless spoken to, and even then, your answers should be brief and deferential. It's like being a piece of furniture that occasionally moves. You're scrubbing floors, polishing silver, dusting shelves. But the moment someone walks in, you're expected to vanish into the background. It's exhausting, not just physically but mentally. You're constantly alert, constantly listening for footsteps, ready to drop everything and fade into the wallpaper. Carrying your purchases back to the house is another physical ordeal. Everything goes into a woven basket that you carry on your arm, and by the time you've bought potatoes, onions, carrots, and a small piece of meat, the basket weighs roughly the same as a small boulder. The handle digs into the crook of your elbow, cutting off circulation and leaving a deep red groove in your skin. You shift it from arm to arm, trying to distribute the discomfort, but there's no comfortable way to carry that much weight. By the time you get home, your arms are trembling, and you've got a new collection of bruises forming where the basket kept bumping against your hip. Once you're back in the kitchen, it's time to start preparing dinner for the family. This is a multi-hour process that involves peeling, chopping, boiling, roasting, and generally wrestling with ingredients that are determined to make your life difficult. The potatoes need peeling, and the peeler is a small, blunt knife that removes more of your thumb skin than potato skin. You're working at a wooden table that's scarred and stained from years of use, and every so often you get a splinter from the rough surface. The onions make your eyes stream, tears running down your face as you chop them into uneven chunks. There's no fan, no ventilation, just you and the onions in a battle of wills that the onions always win. The meat, when you unwrap it, looks questionable at best. It's been sitting in the butcher's shop window for who knows how long, and it has that slightly greyish tinge that meat gets when it's not quite fresh anymore. There's a faint whiff of something off, a sour note that makes you wrinkle your nose. You rinse it under cold water, hoping that'll help, but the smell persists. You're going to cook it thoroughly, obviously, because the alternative is giving the entire family food poisoning and losing your job. Into the roasting pan it goes, surrounded by the sad-looking vegetables you bought at the market. The stove, as always, is either too hot or not hot enough. There's no middle ground with this temperamental iron beast. You're constantly adjusting the vents, adding more coal, raking out ash, trying to maintain a consistent temperature. It's like trying to pilot a spaceship using only a stick and some string. Sometimes the oven roars like a dragon and everything cooks too fast, the outside charring while the inside stays raw. Other times it sulks and barely produces any heat at all, and you're standing there for hours waiting for a potato to soften. You've learned to judge the temperature by holding your hand near the oven door and counting how long you can keep it there before it gets uncomfortable. It's not scientific, but it's all you've got. While the dinner is cooking, you're expected to continue with other tasks. There's mending to be done, because clothes don't just magically repair themselves. You sit in the corner of the kitchen with a basket of torn shirts, ripped aprons, and socks with holes so big you could fit your fist through them. The sewing is done by hand, obviously, because sewing machines are expensive luxuries that households like this don't have. You thread a needle, squinting in the dim light, and begin the tedious process of stitching up seams and patching holes. Your stitches are meant to be small and neat, invisible if possible, but your eyes are tired and your fingers are sore. The stitches end up uneven, but at least they hold the fabric together. The thread is rough and catches on your fingertips, which are already raw from scrubbing and peeling and polishing. Every time you pull the needle through the fabric, you have to grip it tightly, and the constant pressure leaves little dents in your fingers. After an hour of mending, your hand is cramped into a claw, and you have to shake it out to get the feeling back. The pile of mending never seems to get any smaller. For every item you repair, 2 more appear. It's like some sort of cursed magic trick, except instead of rabbits, it's endless holy socks. As the afternoon wears on, you start preparing the vegetables for dinner. Carrots need scrubbing because they're covered in dirt, actual clumps of earth that cling to the skin. You scrub them under cold water with a stiff brush, your hands going numb from the icy temperature. The dirt doesn't want to come off, and you're scrubbing so hard you're half convinced you're going to scrub the carrot itself away. Eventually they're clean enough, or at least you hope they are. You chop them into chunks and toss them into a pot of boiling water, where they'll cook until they're soft enough to mash with a fork. The kitchen is now incredibly hot. The stove has been going for hours, and the heat radiates out in waves, making the air thick and stifling. You're sweating profusely and your dress is sticking to your back in damp patches. Your face is flushed and shiny, and you can feel droplets running down your temples. There's no air conditioning, no fan, not even a window you can open without letting in flies and the smell from the street. You're just stuck in this sweltering room, cooking and sweating and trying not to collapse from heat exhaustion. The smell in the kitchen is a complicated mixture of roasting meat, boiling vegetables, coal smoke, and your own sweat. It's not entirely unpleasant, but it's overwhelming. The air is so thick with cooking smells that you can practically taste it. Your clothes will reek of it by the end of the day, a greasy, meaty odour that clings to the fabric and refuses to wash out. You'll go to bed smelling like a roast dinner, and you'll wake up the next morning still smelling like a roast dinner. It's inescapable. Finally, the dinner is ready. You plate it up carefully, arranging everything just so because presentation matters, even when the food itself is mediocre. The family eats in the dining room, served by you, while you stand silently by the door waiting to refill glasses or bring more bread. You're not allowed to sit, not allowed to eat, not allowed to do anything except hover attentively and respond instantly to any request. Your feet are aching in those terrible shoes, your back is sore from standing all day, and your stomach is growling because you haven't eaten properly since that dismal lunch hours ago. The family takes their time, chatting and laughing and enjoying their meal while you stand there like a statue. They don't notice you, or if they do, they certainly don't acknowledge you. You're part of the furniture, a useful object that brings food and clears plates. If you're lucky, they'll leave some scraps on their plates that you can eat later. If you're unlucky, they'll finish everything and you'll be left with nothing but the congealed gravy and a few sad chunks of gristle. Either way, you'll be eating standing up in the kitchen, shoveling food into your mouth as quickly as possible before the next task demands your attention. After dinner, the washing up begins. This is a monumental task involving every pot, pan, plate, glass, and piece of cutlery used during the meal. There's no dishwasher, obviously. There's just you, a basin of hot water, and a chunk of harsh soap that dries your hands out even more. The water cools quickly, becoming greasy and grey as you work your way through the pile. You're scrubbing at baked-on food, scraping at stubborn bits of burnt stuff, rinsing everything in cold water and stacking it to dry. Your back aches from leaning over the basin, your hands are wrinkled like prunes, and you're starting to fantasize about sitting down. The pots are the worst. They're heavy, blackened with soot on the outside, and crusted with food on the inside. You scrub and scrub, your arm moving in circles, and eventually the food comes off. The soot, however, is permanent. It's been there for years, baked on by countless fires, and it's not going anywhere. You give up on making the outside look nice and focus on getting the inside clean enough that it won't poison anyone. Good enough is the best you can hope for in this job. Morning arrives far too quickly, announced by that same wooden spoon banging on your door. You wake up disoriented, your body stiff and sore from the previous day's work. Every muscle aches. Your shoulders feel like they've been used as punching bags. Your lower back throbs with a dull, persistent pain that worsens when you try to sit up. Your feet, still tender from yesterday's blisters, protest loudly as you swing them out of bed and onto the cold floor. The chill shoots up your legs, and you suppress a groan. There's no time for groaning. There's no time for anything except getting up and starting the whole nightmare over again. You dress in the dark, fumbling with buttons and ties, your fingers still clumsy with sleep and cold. The same rough dress, the same starched apron, The same tight collar that feels like it's trying to strangle you. The same awful shoes that you know will destroy your feet all over again. You briefly fantasize about what it would be like to wear soft slippers, or better yet, nothing at all, just barefoot on a warm carpet, wiggling your toes in comfort. But that's not happening. You shove your feet into the leather torture devices and lace them up, wincing as the stiff material presses against yesterday's blisters. Downstairs, the routine is identical. Fireplaces, water buckets, cooking, serving, cleaning. It's like being stuck in a loop, the same tasks repeating endlessly. The monotony is almost as exhausting as the physical labor. Your brain shuts off and you move through the motions automatically, hands scrubbing, arms lifting, legs carrying you up and down those stairs. You stop thinking about what you're doing and just do it, a mindless automaton in a grubby dress. Today, however, there's an additional task. The carpets need beating. The house has several large rugs, heavy wool things that have been soaking up dust and dirt for months. They need to be taken outside, hung over a line, and beaten with a large paddle until the dust stops flying out of them. You and another maid drag the first carpet out of the sitting room. It's incredibly heavy, a dead weight that seems to actively resist being moved. You're both pulling and heaving, shuffling backwards towards the door, and the carpet keeps bunching up and snagging on furniture. By the time you get it outside, you're both panting and red-faced. You drape the carpet over a washing line strung between two posts. It hangs there limply, looking innocent. You pick up the carpet beater, a flat paddle made of woven wicker, and give the carpet an experimental whack. A cloud of dust explodes from the fabric, a grey plume that hangs in the air before slowly drifting away. You hit it again, harder this time, and even more dust billows out. It's strangely satisfying, so you keep going, whacking the carpet with increasing enthusiasm. Each strike releases another puff of dust, and you're soon surrounded by a grey fog. The dust gets in your nose, your mouth, your eyes. You're coughing and blinking, but you keep hitting the carpet because that's the job. After 10 minutes of solid beating, your arm is tired and your shoulder is sore. The carpet is still releasing dust, but you decide it's good enough. You drag it back inside, wrestle it into position, and then go back for the next one. There are 3 more carpets to do, and by the time you're finished, you're covered head to toe in dust. Your hair is grey with it, your face is streaked with it, and you can feel it coating the inside of your mouth. You look like you've aged 30 years in an afternoon. Later that day, you're sent to scrub the front steps. The steps are stone, wide and shallow, leading up to the front door. They're supposed to be pristine white, a symbol of the household's respectability. In reality, they're grey with grime, stained by muddy boots and soot from the city air. You fill a bucket with water and add a handful of washing soda, which fizzes and dissolves. Then you get down on your hands and knees with a scrubbing brush and start working. The brush has stiff bristles that scratch against the stone, making a harsh, rasping sound. You scrub in circles, putting your weight behind it, and slowly the grime starts to lift. The water in the bucket turns murky brown almost immediately. You keep scrubbing, dipping the brush, scrubbing again. Your knees are pressed against the hard stone, and even through your skirt, you can feel the cold seeping into your bones. Your hands are freezing, plunged repeatedly into the icy water, and they quickly go numb. You can barely feel the brush handle, and you have to look down to make sure you're still holding it. Passers-by walk past on the street, occasionally glancing at you. You're invisible to them, just another maid scrubbing steps. A few people walk close enough that you have to shuffle aside to let them pass, and they don't acknowledge you at all. You're part of the scenery, as unremarkable as the lamppost or the iron railing. You keep scrubbing, your brush moving in rhythmic circles, and eventually the steps are white again. Your knees are bruised, your hands are raw, and your back is screaming, but the steps are white. That's all that matters. One of the more dreaded tasks is dealing with the household's clothing. Not just washing it, which is bad enough, but also ironing it. Ironing in the Victorian era is not a matter of plugging in a light electric appliance and gliding it over fabric. Oh no, it involves heating heavy flat irons on the stove until they're dangerously hot, then pressing them onto fabric with enough force to smooth out wrinkles, all while trying not to scorch anything or burn yourself. The irons are solid chunks of metal with a handle attached. You heat several of them at once on the stove, rotating them as they cool. When one is hot enough, you grab it with a thick cloth, because the handle gets scorching hot too, and you press it onto the fabric. The iron is heavy, several pounds of solid metal, and your wrist aches from holding it at the right angle. You press down, dragging the iron across a shirt, and if you're not careful, you leave a brown scorch mark. Too hot, and you burn the fabric. Too cool, and the wrinkles don't come out. It's a delicate balance that requires constant attention. The smell of hot metal and slightly singed fabric fills the air. It's not an entirely unpleasant smell, but it's intense, and after an hour of ironing, it's all you can smell. Your face is flushed from the heat of the stove and the irons, and sweat is dripping down your back. You swap irons frequently, putting the cooling one back on the stove and picking up a freshly heated one. Your hands are juggling scalding metal, and one slip could mean a nasty burn. You've already got a collection of small pink marks on your forearms where you accidentally brushed against hot metal. The clothing itself is fiddly and complicated. There are shirts with tiny pleats down the front that need to be ironed individually. There are petticoats with layers of ruffles that need smoothing. There are collars and cuffs that are detachable and need to be starched and ironed separately. Each item takes forever, and the pile never seems to get smaller. You iron and iron, your arm moving back and forth, the iron hissing slightly as it presses down on damp fabric. Steam rises in little puffs, carrying with it the smell of starch and cotton. By the time you're done, your entire body is sore. Your wrist is throbbing, your back is stiff, and your face feels like it's been sunburned from the heat. You stack the ironed clothes carefully, trying not to wrinkle them again, and carry them upstairs to the bedrooms. Of course, you have to climb those stairs again, balancing a stack of clothes that's piled so high you can barely see over it. One wrong step, and everything will tumble down, and you'll have to start all over again. You make it to the top without incident, though your legs are shaking by the time you get there. The cold affects everything. The water in the buckets develops a thin skin of ice overnight, and you have to crack it with your knuckles before you can use the water. The soap is hard and reluctant to lather in cold water, and washing anything becomes a battle. Your hands turn red and chapped, the skin splitting painfully across your knuckles. The cracks sting constantly, especially when you plunge your hands into water, which is approximately every 5 minutes. There's no hand lotion, no balm, nothing to soothe the raw skin. You just endure it, wrapping rags around your hands when it gets too bad, and hope that spring comes quickly. Your face suffers too. The wind outside is harsh and biting, and if you have to go out for errands, it slaps you mercilessly. Your cheeks turn bright red, your nose runs constantly, and your lips crack and split. Licking them only makes it worse, but you do it anyway because they feel so dry. Your ears ache from the cold, a deep, throbbing pain that doesn't go away even when you come back inside. You try wrapping a shawl around your head, but it's thin and doesn't provide much protection. The food in winter is even more depressing than usual. Fresh vegetables are scarce and expensive, so you're stuck with root vegetables that have been stored in the cellar for months, potatoes that are starting to sprout, carrots that have gone limp and rubbery, onions that are soft and smell faintly rotten. You cut away the bad bits and use the rest, but everything tastes tired and bland. There's no fresh fruit, no salad, no variety, just endless potatoes, boiled or mashed or roasted, until you're so sick of them you could scream. Meat is also a rarity in winter. It's expensive, and it goes off quickly without refrigeration. What meat you do get is often fatty, gristly, and tough. You boil it for hours to make it edible, and even then it's chewy and flavourless. The broth that results is greasy, with globules of fat floating on the surface. You skim them off as best you can, but the broth still has a slick, oily texture that coats your mouth. It's nourishing, you suppose, in the way that eating cardboard is technically food. It keeps you alive, but that's about all you can say for it. Meals are rushed and joyless. You eat because you have to, not because you enjoy it. Food is fuel, nothing more. There's no time to savour anything, no opportunity to sit down and enjoy a meal. You shove food into your mouth while standing up, often while doing something else with your other hand. You chew quickly, swallow, and move on. Your stomach is often uncomfortably full and uncomfortably empty at the same time, bloated with stodgy food but lacking any real nutrition. You dream of fresh bread, ripe fruit, a piece of chocolate, but those are luxuries far beyond your reach. In addition to all your regular duties, you're sometimes called upon to help with special events. A dinner party, for example, means days of extra work. The house has to be cleaned even more thoroughly than usual, every surface gleaming, every speck of dust eradicated. The silver has to be polished until it shines like a mirror. The best china has to be brought out, washed and set on the table. Fresh flowers have to be arranged, though in winter this means expensive hothouse blooms that you're terrified of damaging. The cooking for a dinner party is on another level entirely. Multiple courses, each one requiring careful preparation. Soup, fish, meat, vegetables, pudding, cheese. You're running around the kitchen like a headless chicken, trying to keep track of what needs to be done when. Pots boil over, things burn, you forget to add salt and have to correct it at the last minute. The kitchen is chaos, hot and frantic, and you're in the middle of it, sweating and panicking and praying that everything turns out all right. During the actual dinner, you're serving. This means carrying heavy trays of food from the kitchen to the dining room, navigating those narrow stairs and corridors without tripping or spilling anything. You're hyper-aware of every step, every movement, because one mistake and you'll drop a tray of expensive food in front of the guests. You present each dish carefully, serving from the left, clearing from the right, remembering all the ridiculous rules of etiquette that govern this kind of thing. The guests don't acknowledge you, chatting amongst themselves as if you don't exist. You're a pair of hands, nothing more. After the guests leave, there's a mountain of washing up. Plates crusted with sauce, glasses smeared with fingerprints, cutlery that needs washing and drying and polishing. The kitchen is a disaster zone, every surface covered in dirty dishes and cooking equipment. You start washing, and you wash for hours, your hands wrinkled and sore, your back aching from standing. By the time you finish, it's the middle of the night, and you still have to clean the kitchen floor and make sure everything is ready for tomorrow. You collapse into bed at some ungodly hour, only to be woken up what feels like minutes later by that cursed wooden spoon. One of the more unpleasant aspects of the job is dealing with damp. The house is perpetually damp, especially in winter. The walls feel clammy to the touch, and there are patches of mould growing in the corners. The mould is black and fuzzy, spreading slowly across the plaster. You're supposed to scrub it off, but it always comes back. The smell of mildew is everywhere, a musty, rotten odour that clings to everything. Your clothes smell of it, the bedding smells of it, even the food sometimes tastes faintly mouldy. The damp gets into your bones. You feel permanently chilled and slightly clammy, like you've just stepped out of a cold shower and can't quite get dry. Your joints ache, your muscles feel stiff, and you wake up every morning feeling like you've been sleeping in a bog. The lack of proper ventilation doesn't help. Windows are kept closed to keep the cold out, which means the damp air just circulates endlessly, never drying out. You're living in a cold, damp cave, and it's slowly sapping your strength and health. Your health, in fact, is a constant concern. You're exhausted all the time, run down from lack of sleep and poor nutrition. You catch colds frequently, and they linger for weeks because you don't get any time to rest and recover. You're expected to work through illness, sniffling and coughing your way through your duties. Your throat is sore, your nose is streaming, and your head feels like it's stuffed with cotton wool. But there's no sick leave, no sympathy, just the expectation that you'll keep going no matter what. You develop a persistent cough that rattles in your chest and won't go away. It's worse at night, keeping you awake even when you're desperate for sleep. You cough and cough, your chest aching with the effort, and eventually you just give up trying to sleep and lie there in the dark, listening to the wind howling outside. The other servants are coughing too, and the sound echoes through the house at night, a chorus of hacking and wheezing. It's like living in a sanatorium, except you're all still expected to work. Then there's the issue of personal hygiene, or the lack thereof. Bathing is a rare event, a major production that involves hauling endless buckets of water, heating them on the stove and filling a small tub. By the time you've done all that, the water is lukewarm at best, and you're too tired to enjoy it. You wash quickly, scrubbing the worst of the grime off your skin, and then you're out again, shivering and dripping in the cold air. Your hair is washed even less frequently, maybe once a month if you're lucky. It gets greasy and lank, hanging in limp strands around your face. You try to keep it pinned up and hidden under your cap, but you can feel how dirty it is. The monotony of your days starts to blur together into one endless, exhausting slog. Monday feels like Tuesday, feels like Friday. The only thing that marks one day from another is Sunday, when you're supposed to get a half day off. Supposed to. In reality, there's still work to be done, and your half day often shrinks to an hour or two if you're lucky. You're supposed to attend church, which means getting dressed in your least dirty clothes and walking to the local chapel. The service is long and boring, the pews are hard, and the priest drones on in a monotone that could put an insomniac to sleep. You sit there, trying not to nod off, while your body screams at you to rest. After church, your precious free time is usually spent doing personal chores that you haven't had time for during the week. Mending your own clothes, washing your hair if you can manage it, writing a letter home if you're literate and have anyone to write to. The letter writing is bittersweet. You want to tell your family that you're doing fine, but the truth is you're exhausted and miserable. So you write bland pleasantries about the weather and the household, omitting the blisters, the cold, the relentless grind. You don't want to worry them, and besides, what could they do? This is your life now. Sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to leave the house for a short walk. The fresh air is glorious, even if the streets are filthy and crowded. Just being outside, away from the stove and the stairs and the watchful eyes of the housekeeper, feels like a holiday. You walk slowly, savouring every minute, looking in shop windows at things you could never afford. Ribbons, sweets, pretty hats. You window shop for dreams, imagining a life where you could buy whatever you wanted, where your hands weren't raw and your feet didn't hurt. Then your time is up, and you trudge back to the house, back to reality. The hierarchy among the servants is rigid and unforgiving. The housekeeper is at the top, ruling the household with an iron fist. She's the one who assigns tasks, inspects your work, and dishes out criticism. Nothing you do is ever quite good enough. The corners aren't clean enough, the silver isn't shiny enough, you're too slow, too clumsy, too something. She watches you like a hawk, ready to swoop down at the slightest mistake. You're terrified of her, and that fear keeps you working even when your body is begging you to stop. Below the housekeeper are various other servants, each with their own rank and responsibilities. There's a cook who rules the kitchen and resents any interference. There are other maids, some senior to you, some junior. Everyone knows their place, and stepping out of line is not tolerated. You keep your head down, do your work, and try not to attract attention. Drawing attention usually means drawing criticism, and you've had more than enough of that. Meals among the servants are eaten in a cramped room off the kitchen. You all sit around a plain wooden table, eating quickly and in near silence. There's no conversation, no laughter. Everyone is too tired. You shovel food into your mouth, barely tasting it, and then it's back to work. The food is the same uninspiring slop you've been eating all week. Bread, potatoes, occasional scraps of meat. It fills your stomach but does nothing for your soul. You daydream about a proper meal, something fresh and flavorful, but it remains a daydream. The lack of privacy is another constant frustration. You share your tiny room with another maid, so you're never truly alone. She snores loudly, a rattling sound that makes sleep even more difficult. She also has questionable personal hygiene, and the small room quickly fills with the smell of unwashed human. You're not much better, to be fair, but at least you're used to your own smell. Someone else's is harder to ignore. You lie in bed, listening to her snore, smelling her unwashed feet, and wonder how your life came to this. There's also no personal space downstairs. You're constantly in someone's way, or someone's in yours. The corridors are narrow, the rooms are crowded, and you're forever bumping into people or having to squeeze past them. Personal boundaries don't exist. You're jostled, pushed, elbowed. Someone's always reaching past you for something, or telling you to move. It's like living in a very slow, very boring rugby match, where everyone's too tired to actually play. The worst part, perhaps, is the sheer relentlessness of it. There's no end in sight. This is your life now, and it will continue to be your life for the foreseeable future. Years stretch ahead of you, an endless procession of buckets and stairs and fireplaces. You'll grow older, more worn down. Your health will deteriorate, and eventually you'll be too old or too sick to work. Then what? There's no pension, no retirement plan. You'll be turned out with nothing left to fend for yourself. It's a bleak prospect, and you try not to think about it. But late at night, when you can't sleep, the thoughts creep in. You start to fantasize about escape. Maybe you could find a different job, something less physically demanding. But what? You're not trained for anything else. You can read and write a little, but not enough to be a governess. You could try to find work in a shop, but those jobs are scarce and sought after. You could get married, but to whom? You never meet anyone. You're stuck in this house day after day, with no opportunity to socialize or meet potential suitors. Marriage seems like a distant, impossible dream. Some of the other maids talk about emigrating, going to America or Australia, where opportunities are supposed to be better. It sounds exciting and terrifying in equal measure. Leaving everything you know, travelling across the ocean to a strange land, starting over. Would it be better, or would it just be a different kind of hardship? You don't know, and you don't have the money for passage anyway, so you stay put, trapped by circumstance and lack of options. The relationship between servants and employers is strange and uncomfortable. You're in their house, handling their possessions, cooking their food, cleaning their most intimate spaces. But you're not part of their lives. You're background noise, a necessary inconvenience. They depend on you completely, but they don't see you as a person. You're a function, a role, a pair of hands that does things. When they do speak to you, it's to give orders or complaints. Never a thank you, never a word of kindness or appreciation. You wonder sometimes what they think of you, if they think of you at all. Do they know your name? Do they care that your feet hurt or that you're exhausted? Almost certainly not. You're interchangeable, replaceable. If you left tomorrow, another maid would be hired and the household would continue exactly as before. You're a cog in a machine, and cogs don't have feelings. The injustice of it eats at you. They live in comfort, eating good food, wearing fine clothes, sleeping in warm beds. You make all of that possible, but you get none of it. You work harder than they ever will, and you have nothing to show for it. Your wages are tiny, barely enough to survive on, and most of it goes on necessities like replacing your worn-out shoes or buying soap. There's nothing left over for treats or savings. You're trapped in a cycle of poverty and hard labour, and there's no way out. You hear about labour movements, people organising for better conditions and fair wages. It sounds wonderful, but also dangerous. Servants who complain or organise are quickly dismissed without references, which makes finding another job nearly impossible. So you keep your head down and your mouth shut, even though you're seething inside. You dream of a world where servants are treated with respect, where hard work is rewarded fairly, where you can have a life outside of work. But it's just a dream. One of the more bizarre aspects of your job is the sheer variety of random tasks you're expected to perform. Cleaning and cooking are the main duties, but there are 100 other odd jobs that fall to you simply because you're there and you're expendable. Polishing door handles, for example. Every brass door handle in the house needs to be polished regularly, and there are dozens of them. You go around with your cloth and polish, rubbing each one until it gleams. It's mind-numbingly boring, and your hand cramps up from the repetitive motion. But shiny door handles are apparently essential to a respectable household, so you polish. Then there's blackening the stove. The big iron stove needs to be coated regularly with a special black paste that keeps it from rusting and makes it look smart. You smear this paste all over the stove, getting it on your hands, your apron, sometimes your face when you absent-mindedly wipe sweat away. The paste has a sharp, chemical smell that makes your eyes water. Once it's applied, you buff it with a cloth until the stove shines, with a dark, almost mirror-like finish. It looks impressive, but it's filthy work, and you're left with black hands that take ages to scrub clean. You're also responsible for maintaining the oil lamps. The house has lamps in every room, and they all need filling, trimming, and cleaning. The oil is thick and has a strong, unpleasant smell like old vegetables. You pour it carefully into each lamp, trying not to spill, because oil stains are nearly impossible to remove. The wicks need trimming with scissors, cutting away the charred ends so the lamp burns cleanly. If the wick is too long, the lamp smokes. Too short, and it doesn't give enough light. It's yet another fiddly task that requires attention and care, and you're doing it at the end of a long day when your attention and care are in very short supply. Cleaning the lamp glasses is another joy. The glass shades get covered in soot and need washing. You remove each one carefully because they're fragile and expensive to replace. You wash them in warm, soapy water, dry them with a soft cloth and replace them. Inevitably, you drop one. It shatters on the floor with a crash that makes your heart stop. You stare at the broken glass, knowing you'll be blamed, knowing the cost will probably be deducted from your wages. You sweep up the pieces, dispose of them, and hope the housekeeper doesn't notice immediately. She does, of course, and you get a tongue lashing that leaves you feeling about 2 inches tall. Another random task is shaking out and airing the bedding. Sheets, blankets, quilts, pillows. Everything needs to be taken outside and shaken vigorously to dislodge dust and air them out. You drag the heavy quilts down the stairs, out into the yard, and hang them over the line. Then you beat them with a stick, just like the carpets, and clouds of dust billow out. The neighbours can probably see you, but you're beyond caring. You beat the bedding, breathing heavily, your arms aching, until you decide it's good enough. Then you haul it all back upstairs and remake the beds with fresh, cleanish sheets. Making beds is an art form you've had to learn. The sheets must be tucked in with hospital corners, tight and neat. The blankets must be smooth with no wrinkles. The pillows must be plumped and arranged just so. It takes forever, especially when you're doing multiple beds, and your back is screaming by the time you finish. You stand back and admire your work for a moment, but you know it'll all be messed up again by tonight. Tomorrow, you'll be back, stripping the beds and starting over. It's like painting that fence again. Nothing ever stays done. You're also expected to deal with any household emergencies. A blocked drain, for instance. The sink in the scullery stops draining, and water backs up, grey and scummy. You're handed a stick and told to fix it. You poke around in the drain, trying not to gag at the smell that rises up. Something is blocking the pipe, some congealed mass of food scraps and grease. You poke and prod, and eventually it dislodges with a disgusting gurgling sound. The water drains away, taking the smell with it mostly. You rinse the sink, scrub your hands, and try to forget the experience. You won't, though. It'll haunt you. When something breaks, you're expected to fix it or find someone who can. A door hinge comes loose and you're there with a screwdriver, tightening screws. A curtain rod falls down and you're balancing on a chair, trying to rehang it without dropping the heavy fabric on your head. You're not a carpenter or a handyman, but you're expected to figure it out. You do your best, bodging repairs with whatever tools and materials are available. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and you get blamed for that too. The household pets are another responsibility. The family has a small, yappy dog that's spoiled rotten. The dog sleeps on cushions, eats better food than you do, and is generally treated like royalty. Your job is to clean up after it. The dog is not house-trained, or perhaps it just doesn't care, and it leaves little presents all over the house. You're the one who has to find them and clean them up. You're crawling around on your hands and knees, scrubbing at stains on the carpet, while the dog watches you with what you swear is a smug expression. You fantasize briefly about booting the little creature out the door, but you'd definitely be dismissed for that. There's also a cat, which is theoretically there to catch mice. In practice, the cat sleeps most of the day and ignores the mice entirely. The cat does, however, catch birds and bring them inside as presents. You find dead birds in odd places, on the doorstep, in the hallway, once memorably on the dining table. You have to dispose of them, scooping up the sad little corpses and taking them outside. The cat watches you with indifference, already planning its next hunt. One particularly unpleasant task is dealing with the house's plumbing, or the lack thereof. Most of the house doesn't have running water, but there's a newfangled water closet on the ground floor, a recent addition that the family's very proud of. It's supposed to be modern and hygienic, but it's temperamental and frequently breaks down. When it does, you're the one who has to deal with it. The mechanism is complicated, involving chains and floats and valves, and you have no idea how it works. You jiggle things, tighten things, and hope it starts working again. Sometimes it does, sometimes it overflows, and you're mopping up water from the floor while trying not to think about what might be in that water. The coal cellar is another source of misery. Coal is delivered periodically and dumped through a hatch into the cellar. Your job is to haul it up in buckets to feed the various fires around the house. The cellar is dark, damp, and covered in coal dust. You descend the rickety steps, fill a bucket with lumps of coal, and haul it back up. The coal is heavy and dirty, leaving black smudges on everything it touches. Your hands, your clothes, your face, all covered in coal dust by the time you're done. You look like a chimney sweep, and you smell like one too, a sharp, sooty odour that lingers for hours. The range of your duties extends even to things like trimming candles. The household uses dozens of candles, and they all need maintaining. The wax drips and hardens, forming stalactites that need to be trimmed off. You scrape away the excess wax, careful not to damage the candle itself, and save the scrapings. Nothing is wasted. The wax scraps are melted down and used to make new candles, a task you're also involved in. You melt the wax, pour it into moulds, insert wicks, and wait for it to harden. It's fiddly and time-consuming, and the hot wax burns if you're not careful. You've got a few small burn marks on your hands from splashes. The psychological toll of this life is perhaps even worse than the physical toll. You're constantly anxious, constantly on edge, waiting for the next criticism or the next impossible task. There's no relaxation, no peace of mind. Even when you're supposedly resting, you're thinking about everything that needs to be done, worrying about whether you've done something wrong, anticipating tomorrow's workload. Your mind never switches off, and it's exhausting in a way that's hard to describe. It's like carrying a heavy weight that you can never put down. The lack of control over your own life is suffocating. You have no say in what you do, when you do it, or how you do it. Every moment is dictated by someone else's needs and demands. You can't decide to take a break, or to do something different, or to just stop for a while. You're a servant, and that means your time, your energy, your entire existence belongs to someone else. It's dehumanizing, and it wears away at your sense of self. You start to forget who you are outside of this job. Are you anything more than a maid? You're not sure anymore. The monotony breeds a kind of numbness. After months of the same routine, you stop feeling much of anything. You're not happy, but you're not exactly unhappy either. You're just there, going through the motions, doing what needs to be done, existing but not really living. It's a grey, flat existence, devoid of joy or excitement or hope. You're surviving, but that's all. And survival, it turns out, is a lot less satisfying than you'd imagined. The isolation compounds everything. You're surrounded by people, but you have no real connection with any of them. The family ignores you. The other servants are too tired or too wary to form friendships, and you never see anyone from outside the household. You're lonely in a way that goes bone deep. You crave conversation, companionship, someone to talk to who sees you as a person. But there's no one. You're alone with your thoughts, and your thoughts are not good company. They're anxious, resentful, despairing. You try to push them away, but they keep coming back. Sleep, when you can get it, is your only escape. In sleep, you're not a maid. You're not hauling buckets or scrubbing floors or emptying chamber pots. You're just somewhere else. Sometimes you dream of home, of family, of a time before all this. Sometimes you dream of impossible things like being rich or free or happy. But mostly you don't dream at all. You fall into unconsciousness, like falling into a deep, dark hole, and then you're dragged back out far too soon by that banging on the door. The cycle begins again, and you're too tired to even feel disappointed. Your body is falling apart slowly. The constant hard labor is taking its toll. Your hands are gnarled and stiff, the joints swollen and painful. Your back has a permanent ache that never goes away, a dull throb that intensifies whenever you bend or lift. Your knees creak when you climb stairs, and there's a sharp pain that shoots up your leg sometimes, making you gasp. You're developing varicose veins, dark purple lines snaking up your calves, visible through your thin stockings. You're too young to feel this old, but here you are, creaking and groaning like someone twice your age. Your teeth are a mess. A couple of them are loose, wiggling when you press on them with your tongue. One has a cavity, a dark spot that aches constantly. You can't afford a dentist, so you just live with the pain. You chew carefully, avoiding that side of your mouth, and hope it doesn't get worse. It will, of course. Everything gets worse. That's the one constant in this life. Things don't get better, they only deteriorate. Your health, your spirits, your hope, all slowly eroding, worn away by time and hardship. The food you eat, or rather the lack of proper nutrition, isn't helping. You're not getting enough of anything. Not enough protein, not enough vegetables, not enough variety. You're perpetually slightly hungry, slightly weak, slightly dizzy. Your body is running on empty, fueled by bread and potatoes and not much else. You fantasize about a proper meal, something hearty and nourishing. Roast meat with gravy, fresh vegetables, a thick slice of buttered bread, a piece of cake for dessert. Your mouth waters just thinking about it. But it's a fantasy, nothing more. Your reality is thin soup and stale bread, and that's all it's ever going to be. The indignity of some tasks is particularly hard to bear. Emptying chamber pots, cleaning up after the dog, scrubbing toilets. These are things that no one should have to do, but you do them every single day. They're degrading, humiliating, a constant reminder of your low status. You're literally dealing with other people's waste, and you're expected to be grateful for the opportunity. It's absurd and infuriating, but there's nothing you can do about it. This is your job. This is your life. The lack of respect is perhaps the hardest thing to endure. You work harder than anyone else in the house, but you're treated as lesser. You're spoken to curtly, ordered around, blamed for things that aren't your fault. You're never thanked, never acknowledged, never appreciated. You're furniture that occasionally moves and performs tasks. The family members walk past you as if you're invisible, or worse, as if you're an obstacle in their way. You've learned to make yourself small, to step aside, to disappear. It's a survival mechanism, but it chips away at your dignity. You wonder sometimes what would happen if you just stopped. If you put down the bucket, took off the apron, and walked out the door. Where would you go? What would you do? You have no savings, no prospects, nowhere to go. You'd end up on the street, which is even worse than this. At least here you have a bed and food, however meager. So you stay, trapped by necessity, enduring because there's no other choice. It's a prison with no walls, but it's still a prison. The lack of any future is crushing. This is it. This is your life, stretching ahead of you for years and years. There's no promotion, no career progression, no pot of gold at the end. You'll be a maid until you're too old or too sick to work, and then you'll be discarded. There's no pension, no safety net. You'll end up in the workhouse, that nightmare destination for the destitute and desperate. Or you'll die, worn out and used up, and be buried in an unmarked grave. It's a bleak prospect, and it haunts you. You try to hold on to small pleasures, a moment of sunshine on your face when you're outside, the taste of a slightly less stale piece of bread, a rare smile from one of the other servants. These tiny moments are all that keep you going. They're not much, but they're something. You hoard them like treasures, pulling them out in your mind when things are particularly bad. That time it snowed and the garden looked pretty. That time you found a wildflower growing through a crack in the pavement. That time the cook let you lick the spoon after making custard. Tiny, insignificant moments, but they're all you have. You've learned to switch off parts of yourself to cope. You don't let yourself feel too much, because feeling means hurting. You don't think about the future, because the future is too depressing. You don't dwell on the past, because the past is gone and irretrievable. You exist in a narrow present, focused only on the task at hand. Scrub this floor, carry this bucket, peel these potatoes, one task at a time, one foot in front of the other, mechanically moving through the day. It's not living, but it's surviving, and surviving is all you can manage. The stairs remain your greatest enemy throughout your employment. You climb them dozens of times each day, always carrying something heavy, and they never get easier. Your thighs burn with the effort, your knees protest with sharp jabs of pain, and your breathing comes in ragged gasps by the time you reach the top floor. The narrow steps are worn smooth in the center from decades of foot traffic, making them slippery when wet, and they're often wet because you're constantly spilling water from those overfilled buckets. You've nearly fallen more times than you can count, catching yourself at the last moment with a jarring grip on the banister that sends pain shooting up your arm. One day, you will fall. You're certain of it, and you'll tumble down those stairs with a bucket of dirty water or a pile of clean laundry, and it will be a disaster. But until then, you just keep climbing. The noise in the house is constant and maddening. Floorboards creak under every footstep, announcing your presence whether you want it or not. Doors squeak on their hinges, a high-pitched whine that sets your teeth on edge. The stove rumbles and clanks as the fire burns inside it. Water gurgles through pipes that probably shouldn't be gurgling. The wind whistles through gaps around windows that don't quite fit their frames. At night, the house settles with groans and cracks that sound almost alive, like the building itself is complaining about the day. You're so used to the noise that silence would probably unnerve you, but you never get the chance to find out. The house is never silent, not even for a moment. Your sense of time becomes warped. Days blend together, but individual moments stretch out forever. 5 minutes of scrubbing a particularly stubborn stain feels like an hour. An hour of washing dishes feels like a lifetime. But when you look back at the end of the week, you can't remember what happened on Tuesday or Thursday or any specific day. It's all just one long, exhausting blur. You've lost track of how long you've been here. Months? A year? Longer? You're not sure. You stopped counting at some point because counting just made it worse, made you realize how much time you were losing to this endless drudgery. The fabric of your clothing is disintegrating slowly. The dress you wear every day is developing thin patches where the fabric has been rubbed and scrubbed and worn down to almost nothing. There are holes forming in your stockings, which you darn repeatedly, but the darns just create hard lumps that rub against your feet and cause new blisters. Your apron, once white or at least off-white, is now a greyish colour that no amount of washing can shift. It's stained with everything imaginable: food, coal dust, soap, rust from the buckets, mysterious marks you can't identify. You've given up trying to keep it pristine. Clean enough is all you can manage, and some days you don't even manage that. The house has peculiar smells in different rooms, and you've learned to identify them all. The parlour smells of furniture polish and mustiness, with an undertone of old paper from the books no one reads. The dining room smells of yesterday's food and candle wax. The bedrooms smell of chamber pots inadequately concealed, stale air, and the particular scent of whichever family member sleeps there. The master bedroom has a heavy cologne smell that catches in your throat. The mistress's room smells of face powder and something floral that doesn't quite mask the general human odour beneath. Your own room smells of damp and desperation, with notes of unwashed human and straw that's slowly composting in your mattress. One morning you wake up and find that you can't straighten your fingers properly. They've locked into a claw shape from gripping brushes and buckets and mop handles, and it takes several painful minutes of flexing and massaging before they'll unbend. This becomes a daily ritual, working movement back into your hands before you can even get dressed. The joints are swollen, the knuckles knobbly and red. You're developing what the older servants call washerwoman's hands, and you're not even 30 yet. Or are you 30? You're not entirely sure. You've lost track of your own age, which seems fitting somehow. Time has no meaning in this house except in terms of tasks completed and tasks remaining. The coal dust gets everywhere, and you mean everywhere. It's in your hair, in your ears, somehow in your undergarments, despite layers of clothing between your skin and the coal cellar. You find black smudges in unexpected places, behind your knees, on your stomach, between your toes. How does it get there? You have no idea. The dust is pervasive and sneaky, infiltrating every crevice and crack. You blow your nose and the handkerchief comes away grey. You cough and you're half convinced you're exhaling tiny puffs of coal smoke. The dust is becoming part of you, working its way into your lungs and settling there permanently. You've heard the old coal workers coughing up black stuff, and you wonder if that's your future too. The cutlery drawer is your nemesis for reasons you can't quite articulate. It needs organising constantly because people just throw things in there without any thought for order. Forks mixed with spoons, knives facing the wrong direction, serving pieces jumbled with everyday utensils. Several times a week you have to empty the entire drawer and reorganise it properly. Knives together, forks together, spoons together, all facing the same direction. It's a pointless task because it'll be a mess again by tomorrow, but the housekeeper checks, so you do it. You've developed strong opinions about cutlery organisation, which is a sign of how far your life has deteriorated. You have feelings about spoons, actual emotional responses to the arrangement of forks. This is what you've become. The rubbish heap out back is a festering pile of horror that you try to avoid thinking about. Everything that can't be reused or burned goes on the heap. Food scraps, broken crockery ashes, unmentionable organic matter. It sits there in all weathers, rotting and decomposing, attracting flies in summer and seagulls year-round. The smell is indescribable, a complex perfume of decay that hits you like a physical force when you approach. You hold your breath, toss whatever you're disposing of onto the heap as quickly as possible, and retreat. But the smell follows you, clinging to your clothes and hair. You've become nose-blind to many things, but the rubbish heap still has the power to make your stomach turn. The sewing basket is bottomless, an impossible magic trick that defies logic. You mend 3 items, and 5 more appear. You work through a pile of torn sheets, and suddenly there's a stack of shirts with missing buttons. You finish those, and someone's discovered a tablecloth with a rip. It never ends. Every garment in the house is determined to fall apart, and you're expected to hold them all together with needle and thread. Your fingers are pocked with needle stabs. tiny wounds that never quite heal because you're stabbing them again the next day. You've lost count of how many times you've sewn your own finger, yelping quietly and sucking the injured digit while trying not to get any moisture on the fabric you're mending. The morning routine has become so automatic that you could do it in your sleep. In fact, you're pretty sure you do sometimes. You wake up already moving, getting dressed without conscious thought, heading downstairs with no memory of making the decision to do so. Your body knows what to do without input from your brain, which is fortunate because your brain gave up properly functioning weeks ago. You're running on muscle memory and habit, a wind-up toy that goes through its programmed motions until someone turns the key again tomorrow morning. The kitchen table becomes a sort of operating theatre for food preparation, and the surgery performed there would horrify any modern health inspector. Meat is butchered directly on the wooden surface, which is stained dark brown from years of this treatment. No amount of scrubbing removes those stains. They're part of the table now, a permanent record of every animal that's been carved up there. You chop vegetables on the same surface, flour pastry on it, roll out dough. Everything shares the same workspace, and you've stopped worrying about cross-contamination because that concept doesn't really exist yet. If it doesn't make people immediately ill, it's fine. That's the standard. The bar is subterranean. Bread day is a special kind of exhausting. The household bakes its own bread to save money, which means you're doing it. Making bread by hand is heavy labor involving kneading enormous quantities of dough until your arms feel like they might drop off. The dough is thick and resistant, fighting back against your attempts to work it. You punch it down, fold it, knead it again, for what feels like hours. Your shoulders burn, your wrists ache, and you're sweating profusely from the effort and the heat of the kitchen. The dough has to rise, which takes hours, and then you punch it down and knead it again. Finally, you shape it into loaves, let it rise again, and bake it. The finished bread is dense and heavy, quite unlike the soft, fluffy loaves from modern shops, but it's food, and it fills stomachs. That's all that matters. The oven temperature is pure guesswork. You've learned to gauge it by how quickly flour browns when you throw a pinch onto the oven floor. Too fast, and it's too hot. If the flour just sits there, it's not hot enough. When it browns in about 30 seconds, that's apparently the right temperature for bread. This is not an exact science. This is voodoo masquerading as baking. Sometimes the bread burns on the bottom and stays doughy in the middle. Sometimes it bakes perfectly. There's no consistency, no reliability, just hope and prayer, and a lot of swearing under your breath. The grease trap on the sink is the most revolting thing you have to deal with on a regular basis. It catches all the fat and food particles that go down the sink, preventing them from blocking the pipes. In theory, it's cleaned regularly. In practice, it gets cleaned when someone finally can't stand the smell anymore. When you pull it out, it's full of congealed fat, mixed with decomposing food scraps. A grey-white sludge that smells like death's breakfast. You scrape it out into a bucket, trying not to retch, and the smell clings to your hands for days, no matter how much you scrub them. The worst part is knowing you'll have to do this again next week, and the week after, forever. You've developed a complicated relationship with the stove. You hate it, obviously, but you also depend on it. It's the only source of heat in winter, the only way to cook food, the only means of getting hot water. You're constantly feeding it coal, adjusting its vents, cleaning out its ash, cajoling it into maintaining the right temperature. It's like caring for a large, temperamental metal animal that occasionally bites you with a blast of heat or a puff of smoke in your face. You've been singed more than once when the fire flared unexpectedly. Your eyebrows are permanently a bit shorter than they should be, the tips burned off by random flame-ups. The daily routine has worn grooves into your brain. You don't think about what you're doing anymore, you just do it. Light fires, haul water, cook breakfast, serve, clean, wash up, start on the next task. The routine is so ingrained that when something breaks the pattern, you're genuinely confused. A room that doesn't need cleaning because the family member is away? You stand in the doorway, uncertain, your internal programming glitching. What do you do with unexpected free time? The answer is you're given something else to do immediately, so the question is moot. There is no free time. The idea itself is laughable. The quality of your sleep has deteriorated to the point where you're not sure you're actually sleeping anymore. You lie down, close your eyes, and then it's morning. You don't feel rested, you don't remember dreaming. It's like you've simply stopped existing for a few hours, then been forcibly restarted. Your body is so exhausted that you drop into something closer to unconsciousness than proper sleep. Your muscles don't relax, your mind doesn't rest. You're just switched off temporarily, then switch back on, still tired, still sore, to face another identical day. The dust is a living entity in this house, constantly regenerating no matter how much you clean. You dust a room thoroughly, and by the next day there's a fresh coating. Where does it come from? The answer is everywhere. Fabric fibers from clothes and curtains and upholstery, skin cells from all the humans living here, soot from the fires, dirt tracked in from outside, plaster crumbling from the walls. The dust is the house slowly decomposing around you, and your job is to fight this entropy with a feather duster and a cloth. You're losing this battle, but you're expected to keep fighting anyway. The stairs have developed distinct personalities in your mind. The bottom 3 steps are loose and creak loudly, announcing your passage. The middle section is fine, relatively speaking. The top 4 steps are narrow and steep, and you've missed your footing there more than once, grabbing the rail just in time to prevent a tumble backwards. You know every quirk, every worn spot, every loose board. You could navigate these stairs in complete darkness, and sometimes you do, carrying a candle that casts more shadows than light, climbing by memory and feel rather than sight. Your vocabulary has expanded to include words you never thought you'd use: scuttle, blacking, tallow, slops, ashes, kindling. These words are your daily reality now, as familiar as your own name. You've forgotten other words, modern words that have no place here. You reach for them sometimes in your mind and find nothing, the concepts fading like old photographs left in sunlight. Your old life is becoming unreal, while this harsh new reality solidifies around you like concrete setting. The family has guests occasionally, which means even more work for you. Guest rooms must be prepared, beds made with the good linens, fresh water provided, chamber pots emptied more frequently. The cooking becomes more elaborate, multiple courses that require precise timing, so everything arrives at the table hot and together. You're running between kitchen and dining room, keeping track of what's been served and what's coming next, trying not to spill soup or drop plates. The guests don't acknowledge you except to move slightly when you're trying to serve from their left. Your furniture again, useful furniture that brings food, but furniture nonetheless. After the guests leave, there's always something broken or damaged. A stain on the guest bed linens, a glass with a chip in it, candle wax dripped on the floor. You clean up after these strangers, erasing the evidence of their visit, restoring the room to its previous state. The house must always be ready for the next guest, the next event, the next demand. Nothing is ever finished. Every completed task just makes room for the next one, an endless conveyor belt of labor that never stops moving. The back of your dress has a permanent damp patch between your shoulder blades where sweat accumulates. It never fully dries out because you're always sweating, either from physical effort or from the heat of the kitchen. The fabric there has become stiff and crusty with dried sweat, and it chafes against your skin when you move. You've given up caring about this, just as you've given up caring about many things related to your personal comfort. Comfort is a luxury you can't afford, mentally or physically. You endure discomfort as your natural state, only really noticing when something becomes painful enough to interfere with work. The morning light through your tiny window is grey and weak, barely worth calling light at all. It doesn't wake you gently or fill the room with warmth. It just makes the darkness slightly less dark, turning black to grey, confirming that yes, unfortunately, it is indeed time to get up and do this all over again. You've started to resent the dawn itself, that daily betrayal that ends the brief escape of sleep and delivers you back into consciousness and labour. If you could bargain with the sun to just stay down a bit longer, you would. But astronomy is indifferent to your exhaustion. The frost patterns on the window would be beautiful if you had any energy left to appreciate beauty. Delicate ferns and swirls of ice, each one unique, nature creating art on the glass. But you don't look at them and think about beauty. You look at them and think about how cold it must be outside if it's freezing on the inside of the window. You think about hauling water in that cold, about your fingers going numb, about the wind cutting through your thin shawl. The frost is just another hardship, another thing making your life more difficult. You've lost the ability to see things for what they are rather than how they affect your workload. Breakfast preparation for the family involves dishes you'll never taste. Kippers, which smell intensely fishy and fill the kitchen with a pungent aroma that lingers for hours. Eggs cooked in butter, the smell rich and tempting. Toast made from good white bread, not the dense brown stuff you eat. Jam, honey, fresh milk in a jug. You prepare all of this with an empty stomach, handling foods that make your mouth water, knowing none of it is for you. It's a special kind of torture, cooking food you're not allowed to eat, smelling it, seeing it, but never tasting it. Your breakfast of grey porridge waits for you after the family's been served, and by then you're so hungry you'd eat cardboard if someone put it in a bowl. The dining room in the morning has a peculiar quality, the light coming through the window catching dust motes in the air. You watch them drift as you set the table, tiny particles floating in shafts of pale sunlight, and you think about how much of your life is spent fighting dust. You're fighting entropy, fighting decay, fighting the natural tendency of everything to fall into chaos and disarray. The dust will win eventually. It always does. But you're paid to pretend otherwise, to create an illusion of order and cleanliness that lasts just long enough for the family to eat their breakfast in comfort before it all needs doing again. The floorboards in the hallway are wearing unevenly, creating a topographic map of the household's traffic patterns. There's a worn path from the front door to the stairs, another from the stairs to the kitchen, deep grooves where thousands of feet have walked thousands of times. You're adding to this wear every day, your own feet contributing to the slow erosion of the floor. In 100 years, someone might see these worn patches and wonder about the lives that created them. Or more likely, the floor will be replaced and all evidence of your passage erased. You'll leave no mark, no trace, no indication that you were ever here. The copper pans need polishing with an abrasive paste that turns your hands green. The chemical reaction between the copper and the polish creates this colour, staining your skin with a greenish tint that makes you look vaguely unwell. You scrub the pans until they shine like mirrors, buffing them to a high gloss that shows your reflection. You look at your face in the curved copper surface, distorted and strange, and barely recognize yourself. Is that really you? That tired, drawn face with the dull eyes. When did you start looking like that? You polish faster, buffing away your reflection until the copper is so bright you can't look at it anymore. The scullery sink is permanently stained no matter how hard you scrub. The stone has absorbed years of grease and dirt, creating patterns like watermarks or fossils. You've tried everything to clean it: hot water, cold water, harsh soap, scouring powder, elbow grease until your arm nearly falls off. The stains remain, testament to the thousands of pots and pans and dishes that have been washed there before you arrived. You'll add your own contribution to these stains, and the next maid after you will scrub futilely at them too. It's comforting in a grim way, this continuity of suffering. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. Your apron pocket is full of useful things you've learned to keep on hand. A bit of string for emergency repairs, a couple of pins for fastening things that come undone, a small rag for wiping up spills immediately before they become stains, a stub of pencil for making notes on your hand about things you need to remember. Your pocket is your toolkit, and you've learned through hard experience what you need to carry at all times. The weight of these items is familiar, a small pressure against your hip that's oddly reassuring. As long as you have your pocket supplies, you can handle most minor crises. The market on your errands takes you past shops you'll never enter. A milliner's window displays hats trimmed with ribbons and artificial flowers, pretty confections that cost more than you earn in a year. A dress shop has a gown in the window, the fabric shimmering and elegant, tiny buttons running up the back that would take someone else half an hour to fasten. A jeweller's window glitters with items so far beyond your reach they might as well be on the moon. You look at these things and feel nothing, not even envy anymore. They're not for people like you. They exist in a different world, one you can see but never touch. The weight of wet washing is truly impressive, defying all logic about how much water fabric can absorb. A sheet fresh from the washing tub weighs approximately the same as a medium-sized dog, and you're expected to wring it out by hand. You twist and squeeze, water streaming out, your hands burning from the effort and the hot soapy water. Your wrists protest, your forearms shake, and still there's more water to wring out. By the time you've done a full load of washing, your hands are trembling so badly you can barely hold a cup. But that's fine, because there's no time for a cup of tea anyway. The washing needs hanging, and there's already another task waiting. The fireguard in the parlour is decorative ironwork that accumulates soot in every crevice and curlicue. Cleaning it involves a small brush and infinite patience, working into every tiny space, scraping out the accumulated grime. It takes an hour to do properly, and the family will never notice whether you've done it or not. But the housekeeper will notice because she inspects everything with an eye for detail that borders on the supernatural. She'll run a finger along some impossible-to-see ledge and produce a smudge of dirt, triumphant evidence of your inadequacy. So you clean the fireguard, every last bit of it, even the parts no one will ever look at. The smell of carbolic soap is one you'll associate with this house forever. It's used for everything: floors, surfaces, general disinfecting. The smell is sharp and medicinal, catching in your nose and throat. It's supposed to smell clean, and it does, but it's a harsh chemical clean rather than a fresh, pleasant clean. Everything in the house has a faint undertone of carbolic, including you. Your clothes reek of it, your hands smell of it constantly. Years from now, if you ever smell carbolic soap again, you'll be instantly transported back to this place, this time, this exhausting servitude. The kitchen implements have taken on the patina of age and use, each one bearing the marks of its purpose. The wooden spoons are worn smooth where countless hands have gripped them, the wood darker with absorbed oils and liquids. The knives have been sharpened so many times that the blades have become thin and slightly curved, their original shape transformed by decades of use. The pots have dents and dings, battle scars from being dropped or knocked against the stove. These tools are older than you, and they'll outlast you too, continuing their service long after you're gone. There's something depressing about being more temporary than a cooking pot. The laundry marks on the household linens are tiny embroidered initials in one corner, identifying the items as property of the family. You've added similar marks to the servants' linens, crude stitches that spell out abbreviations or numbers. This is necessary because laundry gets mixed up, items go missing, and there must be accountability. The fact that even bed sheets are marked with ownership, that nothing is trusted to simply stay where it belongs, tells you something about the household. Everything is accounted for, everything tracked, including you. The beetles that emerge at night are large, dark, and disturbingly fast when disturbed. You've made your peace with sharing the house with insects, because there's no alternative. They live in the walls, under the floorboards, in the spaces between things. Sometimes you see them scuttling across the floor in the kitchen after dark, heading for crumbs or spills. They scatter when you approach, disappearing into cracks and crevices with impressive speed. You don't bother trying to eliminate them anymore. For every one you kill, 10 more emerge. They're winning this war, and you've surrendered. The cutting board is scored with knife marks, a crosshatch pattern of cuts that have accumulated over years of chopping. The grooves harbour bacteria that would horrify anyone with modern knowledge of hygiene. But you don't have that knowledge, so you just scrub the board with hot water and hope for the best. The wood is stained dark in places, permanently discoloured by beetroot and other strong vegetables. It's warped slightly, no longer sitting flat on the table, rocking when you press down to chop. You've learned to compensate, holding it steady with one hand while chopping with the other, an awkward technique that slows you down but prevents accidents. The household accounts are kept in a ledger you occasionally glimpse when delivering something to the study. Neat columns of figures, income and expenditure, every penny recorded. Your wages appear in this ledger as a line item, a small figure in the expenditure column. You're a cost to be managed, an expense to be minimized. This shouldn't bother you, but it does. To see yourself reduced to a number, to know that the family looks at that number and thinks about whether you're worth it, whether they could find someone cheaper. You probably cost less than they spend on coal for a month, but you're still considered an area where savings might be made. The texture of wet flour on your hands is uniquely unpleasant, creating a sticky paste that's difficult to wash off. It gets under your nails, between your fingers, drying into a cement-like substance that requires vigorous scrubbing to remove. You're working with flour daily for bread or pastry or dusting surfaces, and your hands are perpetually coated with a fine white powder. Mixed with water, this creates a glue that's maddeningly persistent. You scrape at your fingernails with a brush, trying to dislodge the packed flour, and succeed only in making your nail beds sore and red. The formal dinner service is kept in a locked cabinet in the dining room, only brought out for special occasions. The plates are fine china, thin enough to see light through when held up, painted with delicate patterns. The glassware is crystal, each piece catching and refracting light. The silver cutlery is heavy and ornate, each piece probably worth more than you'll earn in your lifetime. You handle these precious items with terror, knowing that breaking or damaging even one piece would be catastrophic. Your hands shake as you wash them, as you dry them, as you put them away. The weight of their value is crushing. The coal scuttle is a decorative brass bucket that needs filling from the cellar supply. You carry it down empty, fill it with lumps of coal, and carry it back up. The coal dust transfers from the lumps to the inside of the scuttle, from the scuttle to your hands, from your hands to everything you touch afterwards. The brass needs polishing regularly to maintain its shine, but it's always slightly grubby from the coal residue. You're fighting a losing battle, trying to keep a coal container clean. The absurdity of this is not lost on you, but absurdity is no excuse for not doing it. The sounds of the family moving around upstairs are your constant background soundtrack. Footsteps crossing rooms, doors opening and closing, muffled voices in conversation. You've learned to identify people by their footsteps. The master has a heavy, deliberate tread. The mistress walks more lightly, with quick steps. There are different patterns for different times of day. Slow morning movements, purposeful afternoon walking, the settling sounds of evening. You track their movements unconsciously, always aware of where they are, anticipating when you might be summoned. The mangle in the scullery is a fearsome device consisting of 2 heavy rollers turned by a large handle. Wet laundry is fed between the rollers, which squeeze out water with impressive force. The mangle requires significant strength to operate, turning the handle against the resistance of wet fabric and tight rollers. You've caught your fingers in it more than once, painful pinches that leave bruises. The rollers themselves need adjusting periodically, tightened or loosened depending on the thickness of fabric being mangled. Operating this device is an upper body workout that leaves your shoulders burning and your hands cramping on the wooden handle. The taste of the tea you drink is so weak it barely qualifies as tea at all. The leaves are used multiple times, each brewing extracting less flavour, until you're essentially drinking hot water with a slight brownish tint. The first pot goes to the family, strong and fresh. The second brewing goes to the senior servants. The third or fourth brewing eventually makes its way to you, all flavour long since extracted, leaving only a vague suggestion that tea was once involved. You drink it anyway, because it's hot and wet, and those qualities alone make it worthwhile. The temperature is more important than the taste. The back stairs are different from the main staircase, steeper and narrower, designed for servants to move unseen through the house. The steps are bare wood, no carpet to soften footfalls or provide cushioning. The walls are unpapered, just plain plaster painted a dull colour. There's no decoration, no pretense of comfort. These stairs are purely functional, a conduit for moving between floors without intruding on the family's spaces. You use these stairs constantly, climbing them with buckets and baskets, going up empty-handed and coming down loaded. The treads are worn smooth in the centre from generations of servant feet, a physical record of the countless trips made by people like you. Your hair has become a problem without solution. It needs washing but rarely gets it. It needs brushing, but you're too tired most nights. It's constantly falling out of its pins, stray strands escaping your cap and getting in your face. You tuck them back impatiently, smearing whatever's on your hands into your hair in the process. Flour, grease, soot, coal dust. Your hair has collected all of it. It's lank and dull, perpetually grimy, and you're too exhausted to care anymore. It's just another part of your body that's suffering from neglect, joining your hands, your feet, your back, and everything else. The morning routine of emptying and cleaning the chamber pots has become so automatic that you perform it with your mind entirely elsewhere. Your hands know what to do without input from your conscious brain, which is fortunate because your conscious brain refuses to acknowledge what your hands are doing. This dissociation is a coping mechanism, a way to get through unpleasant tasks without actually experiencing them fully. You're physically present but mentally absent, a useful trick you've developed for the worst parts of this job. By the time you return to full awareness, the task is complete, and you're already moving on to something else. The linen closet smells of lavender, or rather, of dried lavender that was placed there months ago and has lost most of its scent. There's a faint ghost of fragrance, a memory of flowers, mixed with the smell of clean cotton and camphor used to deter moths. The shelves are stacked with sheets and towels and tablecloths, all neatly folded, sorted by size and purpose. You're responsible for maintaining this organization, for ensuring clean linens are available when needed and dirty ones are removed promptly. The closet is one of the tidier spaces in the house, a small pocket of order that you actually have control over. It's oddly satisfying, even though it's just folded fabric. The boot jack in the back hall is a simple wooden device for removing boots, and it's one of the small tools that makes life slightly less difficult. You step on one end, wedge your heel into the groove, and pull your foot up, leaving the boot behind. Without this, removing muddy boots would be a wrestling match involving bending over and pulling and likely falling over. With the boot jack, it's quick and efficient. These small improvements in daily life are worth noticing because they're so rare. Most things are difficult. The few things that aren't difficult become treasured islands of ease in an ocean of effort. The pattern of wear on your clothing tells the story of your work. The front of your apron is stained and faded from spills and splashes. The back is cleaner, protected by the fact that you rarely sit down. The cuffs are frayed from being constantly wet, the fabric breaking down from repeated soaking and drying. The hem is ragged from dragging on floors and stairs. Your dress is disintegrating in real time, slowly falling apart like everything else in your life. Eventually it will need replacing, but not yet. Not until it's literally unwearable. You'll squeeze every last bit of use from this garment before admitting defeat. The kindling box needs refilling daily, a task that falls to you when there's a spare moment. Spare moments are rare, so the kindling box is often empty when you need it, leading to frantic splitting of wood to create thin pieces suitable for starting fires. The axe for splitting kindling is small and blunt, requiring multiple strikes to split even thin branches. You balance wood on the chopping block, raise the axe, and bring it down with as much force as you can muster. Sometimes the wood splits cleanly, more often it doesn't, and you have to wiggle the axe free and try again. By the time you've created enough kindling, your arms are tired, and you're running late for the next task. The delivery entrance at the back of the house is where tradespeople come and go, bringing supplies and removing rubbish. You interact with these people occasionally, the butcher's boy with his basket of wrapped meat, the coal man with his sacks and perpetual coating of black dust, the rag and bone man with his cart and his cry of what he's buying. These brief interactions are almost social, a reminder that there are other working people in the world, not just you and your isolated suffering. The delivery people are tired too, worn down by their own labour, but at least they move through the world rather than being trapped in one house. The mop is a crude thing, just a bundle of rags attached to a long wooden handle. It's heavy when wet, awkward to manoeuvre, and not particularly effective at cleaning. You slosh it across the floor, pushing dirty water around more than actually removing it. The technique is to wet the floor thoroughly, scrub at stubborn spots with the mop head, then mop up the dirty water and wring it out into a bucket. This process needs repeating until the water in the bucket stays relatively clear, indicating the floor is actually clean rather than just redistributed dirt. Your shoulders ache from wringing out the mop, twisting the heavy wet rags to extract water, your hands cramping on the wooden handle. The shelf above the kitchen dresser is too high for you to reach without standing on a stool. This shelf holds items used infrequently, the large serving platters, the punch bowl, the good tureen. These items get dusty while waiting to be needed, so when they are needed, they must be washed first. You climb on the stool, wobbling slightly, reaching up to bring down whichever piece is required. The height makes you nervous. Falling from the stool would mean injury, and injury would mean being unable to work, which would mean dismissal. This fear makes you careful, but also makes the simple act of retrieving a platter more stressful than it should be. The change in seasons brings different challenges and different forms of misery. Spring means spring cleaning, as already established, but also means pollen that drifts in through open windows and settles on every surface. Summer means heat and flies and food that goes off quickly. Autumn means leaves that blow into the house whenever the door opens, tracked through on shoes, creating extra sweeping. Winter means cold and darkness and everything taking twice as long, because your hands don't work properly when they're numb. Each season has its own particular torments, so there's never a good time of year. There's only variations on difficult. The range of your responsibilities continues to expand in unexpected ways. You're asked to do laundry, which you expected, but you're also expected to know how to treat different stains. Grease requires one approach, ink another, rust another still. You're supposed to know which fabrics can withstand hot water and which need gentle handling. You're meant to understand which items can be wrung out aggressively and which need careful pressing between towels. This knowledge is assumed, not taught. You're just supposed to know, and when you don't know and something gets ruined, it's your fault for your ignorance. The pecking order among the servants becomes more apparent the longer you're here. The housekeeper is untouchable, her authority absolute. The cook is temperamental and best avoided when she's in a mood. There's a parlour maid who's been here for years and knows exactly how everything should be done, and she's not shy about telling you when you're doing it wrong. Then there's you, near the bottom, knowing your place, keeping your head down. And somewhere below you, though you rarely see them, are even more junior servants, tweenies and scullery maids who have it even worse than you do. This hierarchy is rigid and reinforced constantly through small interactions that remind everyone of their rank. The keys to various locked rooms and cabinets hang on a ring attached to the housekeeper's belt, jangling as she walks. This jangling announces her approach, giving you a few seconds warning to look busy if you've paused to catch your breath. The sound of those keys is Pavlovian at this point, triggering an immediate response of alertness and mild panic. You've learned to identify the housekeeper by sound before she even rounds the corner, that distinctive jingle of metal on metal signalling her presence. The keys are a symbol of her authority, her access to everything, her control over the household's resources. The slate floor in the scullery develops a slick coating of grease and spills that makes it treacherously slippery. You've nearly fallen more times than you can count, your feet sliding out from under you, catching yourself at the last moment with a jarring grab at the edge of the sink. Eventually you do fall, landing hard on your hip with a thud that knocks the wind out of you. You lie there for a moment, stunned and hurting, before hauling yourself upright and continuing with work. There's no time to recover. You're bruised but not broken, so you keep going. The bruise blooms over the next few days, a spectacular purple and yellow display across your hip that hurts when you bump it against tables and door frames. You become hyper-aware of that side of your body, protecting it, adjusting how you move to avoid causing yourself more pain. The clotheslines in the yard are strung at heights that require stretching to reach. You stand on tiptoe, arms extended above your head, pegging wet sheets to the line. Your shoulders burn from holding this position, and you can feel the strain all the way down your back. The pegs themselves are simple wooden clips that sometimes break under the weight of wet fabric, sending sheets tumbling into the dirt below. When this happens, you have to wash them again, starting the whole process over. You've learned to test each peg before trusting it with an entire sheet, squeezing it to check for cracks, but sometimes they break anyway. The yard itself is packed dirt that turns to mud when it rains, so hanging washing requires choosing your footing carefully to avoid standing in puddles. The smell of baking bread, when it's going well, is one of the few pleasant sensory experiences in this house. The yeasty, warm scent fills the kitchen and makes the whole place smell almost welcoming. For a brief time, while the bread is baking, you can pretend this is a normal home where nice things happen. Then the timer in your head tells you it's done. You pull the loaves from the oven, and you're immediately on to the next task. The bread smell lingers, but your moment of almost contentment has passed. The bread isn't for enjoying, it's just another completed task in an endless list. The soot from the chimneys falls down occasionally when the wind is wrong, creating black puffs that explode into the room. You'll be tending a fire when suddenly there's a downdraft and a cloud of soot billows out into your face. You close your eyes just in time, but you still inhale some, coughing and spluttering, your face now coated in fine black powder. The soot gets everywhere, in your hair, up your nose, in your mouth. You taste it for hours afterwards, a bitter, gritty flavour that no amount of water can fully wash away. Your face is black except for the tracks where you've rubbed your eyes, creating streaks of slightly cleaner skin. You must look ridiculous, but there's no mirror nearby and no time to worry about your appearance anyway. The rhythm of work becomes almost meditative when you're tired enough. Your body moves through familiar motions while your mind drifts away somewhere else. Scrub, rinse, sweep, 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 fold, stack, fold, stack. The repetition is numbing, switching off the parts of your brain that protest and complain and feel sorry for yourself. You become an automaton, simply executing programmed routines, and there's a strange peace in this absence of thought. The work gets done without you really being present for it. You return to awareness later, finding tasks completed that you don't remember doing, time skipped over like pages torn from a book. The copper hot water cylinder in the scullery is a temperamental beast that occasionally makes alarming noises. It rumbles and gurgles, expanding and contracting with temperature changes, creating clangs and bangs that sound like something is about to explode. You've been assured it's safe, but those noises are still unsettling. When you need hot water for washing up, you turn the tap and wait for the hot water to arrive, initially getting a gush of cold followed by a hesitant warm trickle. The water temperature is unpredictable, sometimes scalding, sometimes barely warm. You adjust the mix of hot and cold by feel, adding more of one or the other until you achieve something usable. The social hierarchy extends even to the servants' meals, with subtle distinctions about who sits where and who serves themselves first. The cook gets first choice of any leftovers. The housekeeper takes her portion next. Then the other servants in order of seniority. You're near the end of this line, so by the time the dish reaches you, there's not much choice left. You take what you can get and eat it without complaint, because complaining would mark you as difficult and ungrateful. The food is fuel. The taste and quantity are secondary concerns. You eat to maintain the ability to work, nothing more. The accumulation of tiny injuries is constant. Cuts from knives, burns from hot pans, splinters from rough wood, bruises from bumping into things in narrow spaces. None of these injuries are serious individually, but collectively they create a state of low-level pain that's always present. You've got a burn healing on your forearm, a cut on your finger wrapped in a bit of rag, a bruise on your shin that you don't remember getting. Your body is a map of minor wounds, each one a small story of something that went wrong during a task. You've stopped treating most of these injuries. You just let them heal on their own while you continue working. The parlour has a particular feeling in the afternoon when sunlight comes through the windows at an angle and illuminates the dust you missed during morning cleaning. You see every mote drifting in the air, every smudge on the glass, every cobweb in the corners. It's dispiriting to see your work revealed as inadequate by the harsh light. You thought the room was clean, but the sunlight proves otherwise. There's no point dwelling on it. You'll clean it again tomorrow, and it'll be just as dusty again by next week. The cycle continues regardless of how you feel about it. The act of carrying a candle through dark corridors is more difficult than it seems. The flame gutters with every step, threatening to go out and leave you in complete darkness. You cup your hand around it protectively, shielding it from drafts, moving carefully to avoid creating air currents. The light it provides is minimal, a small sphere of visibility that moves with you, leaving everything else in darkness. Shadows loom and shift, playing tricks on your tired eyes. You've learned the layout well enough to navigate mostly by memory, but the candle provides just enough light to avoid walking into walls or tripping over unexpected obstacles. The washboard is a vicious instrument disguised as a cleaning tool. The metal ridges are designed to agitate fabric and loosen dirt, but they also scrape your knuckles raw when you're scrubbing vigorously. You've developed thick calluses on your knuckles as protection, but they still get scraped and sometimes they crack and hurt. The motion of scrubbing against the board is hard on your shoulders and wrists, a repetitive action that creates strain. You've learned to vary your technique, switching angles and using different muscles, trying to distribute the work and avoid injury. It's not entirely successful. Something always hurts. The broom closet is a narrow space jammed full of tools and supplies, everything thrown in haphazardly because there's no time for organization. When you need something, you have to dig through the chaos, moving buckets and mops and brushes until you find what you're looking for. Everything falls out when you open the door, an avalanche of cleaning supplies that you have to catch and shove back in. You tell yourself you'll organize it properly one day when you have time, but that day never comes. The closet remains a chaotic jumble, and you waste time every day wrestling with it. The chamber pot situation has a particular horror in summer, when the heat intensifies everything. The smell becomes exponentially worse, rising up in waves when you remove the lid. Flies appear from nowhere, attracted by the scent, buzzing around in a way that makes your skin crawl. You move as quickly as possible, holding your breath until your lungs burn, desperate to complete this task and get away from it. The cesspit itself is even worse in the heat, fermenting and bubbling like some sort of hellish stew. You can see vapors rising from it when you lift the lid, visible evidence of the decomposition happening below. It's genuinely gag-inducing, and you've come close to adding your breakfast to the pit on more than one occasion. The experience of being invisible takes on new dimensions the longer you're here. It's not just that the family doesn't see you, it's that they see through you. You can be standing right there, holding a dish or waiting to clear plates, and they'll have conversations as if you're not present. You hear things you probably shouldn't hear, gossip about neighbours, complaints about money, family arguments. They discuss you sometimes, referring to the maid as if you don't have ears, commenting on your work or appearance as if you're a piece of furniture being evaluated. You stand there expressionless, pretending not to hear, storing these observations away to think about later when you're alone. The salt cellar needs refilling regularly, a tiny task that's easy to forget until someone reaches for it and finds it empty. The salt is stored in a large container in the pantry, and you scoop it out with a small spoon, funneling it into the delicate little dishes that sit on the dining table. The salt is sometimes damp and clumpy, especially in humid weather, and you have to break up the lumps before filling the cellars. Your fingers end up coated with salt crystals, and if you have any cuts or scratches on your hands, you discover them immediately when the salt finds them. That sharp sting is a reliable indicator of damage you didn't know you had. The curtains in the sitting room are heavy velvet that collects dust like it's their primary function. They need beating and brushing regularly, which involves taking them down, carrying them outside, and attacking them with a carpet beater. The velvet nap releases clouds of dust when beaten, and you sneeze repeatedly, your nose running, eyes watering. The curtains are also remarkably heavy, and rehanging them requires standing on a chair and wrestling with yards of thick fabric while trying to get the hooks back into their rings. Your arms shake with the effort of holding the heavy curtains up, and you inevitably drop them at least once, meaning you have to start over. The various clocks in the house all tell slightly different times, creating a temporal confusion that makes it hard to know what the actual time is. The hall clock is considered authoritative, but the drawing room clock runs fast and the study clock is slow. You learn to mentally adjust based on which clock you're looking at, adding or subtracting minutes to get the real time. This would be merely annoying, except that you're supposed to have meals ready at precise times, so you're constantly calculating. If the kitchen clock says 5:30, but it runs 3 minutes slow, then it's actually 27 minutes past, which means dinner needs to be ready in 18 minutes. This mental arithmetic is exhausting on top of everything else. The sensation of being perpetually behind schedule becomes your normal state. There's always something that should have been done 5 minutes ago. You're always rushing, always running late, always conscious that someone might be waiting for something you haven't finished yet. The panic of, I should be doing something else right now, never quite goes away. Even when you're doing a task, you're anxiously thinking about the next task, and whether you'll finish this one in time to start that one. The mental load of tracking and prioritizing work is sometimes harder than the physical work itself. The family's clothes require special handling that you've learned through trial and error. Wool must be washed in cool water or it shrinks. Silk must be treated gently or it tears. Lace must be dried flat or it distorts. Starch must be applied to collars but not to cuffs. Each garment has its own requirements, its own quirks, and you're expected to remember all of these without guidance. You've made mistakes, shrunk a wool shawl, torn a silk blouse, over-starched a petticoat until it was stiff as cardboard. Each mistake earned you a reprimand and a lecture, and now you're paranoid about every garment, checking and double-checking before proceeding. The cooking fat is saved and reused until it's nearly black, skimmed off dripping pans and stored in a jar. This recycled fat is used for frying and roasting, imparting a flavour that's hard to describe. Old, slightly rancid, with undertones of everything that's been cooked in it previously. Fresh fat or butter is a luxury used sparingly, so you're cooking mostly with this multi-use grease that's been through countless iterations. It smokes when heated, filling the kitchen with an acrid haze, and it leaves a coating in your mouth that's unpleasant, but not quite unpleasant enough to refuse to eat. This is the taste of poverty and frugality made edible. The edges of your vision have developed dark spots that you're fairly sure aren't normal. Exhaustion and malnutrition are taking their toll, creating moments where your vision goes dark around the edges, or spots float across your field of view. You've also noticed that you get dizzy when standing up quickly, the room spinning briefly before settling. These symptoms worry you, but there's nothing to be done about them. There's no doctor for servants, no time off to recover, no special food to improve your nutrition. You just push through, hoping your body holds together long enough to finish the day's work. The mirror in the upstairs hallway gives you occasional glimpses of yourself as you hurry past. You try not to look, but sometimes you catch sight of your reflection and it's jarring. That can't be you, that gaunt-faced person with dull eyes and bad posture. But it is you. That's what this life has made you. Thin, tired, old before your time. You look away quickly, uncomfortable with this visual evidence of your deterioration. It's easier not to look, easier to forget what you look like, easier to just focus on the work and not think about the physical cost it's extracting. The mice have become almost pets, in a strange way. You've given up trying to eliminate them and now just coexist. There's one particular mouse that you see regularly in the kitchen, always in the same corner, probably living behind the skirting board there. You've named it mentally, though you'd never admit this to anyone. When you see it, you sometimes leave a crumb, not quite deliberately, but not quite accidentally either. The mouse has a kinked tail, which is how you recognize it among the general mouse population. This is perhaps the strangest symptom of your isolation. Befriending a rodent because it's the only creature that seems to share your space without making demands. The brass fender around the fireplace needs polishing with the same frequency as everything else brass in the house, which is to say, constantly. Brass tarnishes almost immediately after being polished, a cruel joke played by chemistry on people who have to maintain appearances. You polish the fender, buffing it to a brilliant shine, and within days it's dulled again, developing that greenish tarnish that brass seems determined to acquire. The polishing paste is gritty and smells metallic, and it leaves your hands grey and slippery. You use so much of it that you've developed an intimate knowledge of its properties, how it feels, how it smells, how it performs in different weather. This is not knowledge you wanted. The final acceptance of your situation comes gradually, not as a single moment of understanding, but as a slow erosion of resistance. You stop thinking about what your life was and focus entirely on surviving what it is now. The past becomes unreal, a dream you once had that's fading in the harsh light of daily survival. The future becomes irrelevant, too distant and unlikely to waste energy thinking about. There's only now, only the current task, only the immediate demands of this moment. This narrowing of focus is how you cope, how you keep going, how you don't break down completely. You become small and simple, reduced to the basic functions of work and rest. And in this reduction, there's a kind of terrible peace. The sounds you make while working become unconscious. Grunts of effort, sighs of frustration, occasional muttered curses under your breath. You're not even aware you're making these noises until someone comments on them, startling you back into self-consciousness. Your body is expressing the strain you're under through these involuntary sounds, little releases of pressure that help you continue. The groaning when you lift something heavy, the hiss through your teeth when something hurts, the quiet talking to yourself as you work through a complicated task. These sounds are the soundtrack of your labor, embarrassing when you notice them, but impossible to suppress entirely. The rare occasions when you're complimented on your work are so surprising, they almost don't register. Someone says, "Well done," or "That looks nice," and you have to process what you've heard, turning the words over in your mind to make sure you understood correctly. Praise is so unusual that you don't quite know how to respond. You mumble a thank you, duck your head, and hurry away before they can change their mind or add a criticism. These tiny moments of acknowledgement sustain you for days, bright spots in the grey expanse of work. You turn them over in your memory, examining them from every angle, extracting every bit of warmth they contain. The structure of your days has become so rigid that any deviation is deeply unsettling. When the family goes away and the routine changes, you're adrift, uncertain how to organize your time. The work still needs doing, but without the usual schedule driving you, you find yourself moving slowly, almost confused. You've become so accustomed to external demands dictating every moment that acting on your own initiative feels foreign. You do the work eventually, of course, but it takes conscious thought rather than automatic motion. This reveals how much of yourself you've surrendered to the routine, how thoroughly you've been shaped by these demands. The pride you once took in doing things well has been replaced by a simple desire to do things well enough to avoid criticism. Excellence is an unaffordable luxury when you're this tired. You aim for acceptable, for good enough, for won't get me in trouble. The standards you're judged by feel arbitrary and impossible anyway. The same task done the same way might be praised one day and criticized the next, depending on the housekeeper's mood. So you stop trying to predict what will be acceptable and just do your best, hoping it's enough, too exhausted to do anything more. The few possessions you own have taken on outsized importance. A comb with most of its teeth still intact, a handkerchief that's not too threadbare, a spare set of laces for your boots. These small items are precious because they're yours, chosen and owned and maintained by you. They represent tiny islands of autonomy in a life where nearly everything is dictated by others. You keep them in a small box under your bed, checking periodically to make sure they're still there, still yours. This checking is irrational but comforting, a ritual that grounds you. The accumulation of knowledge about the household has happened without you noticing. You know which floorboards creak, which doors stick, which taps drip, which windows don't close properly. You know where everything is kept, how everything works, what needs to be done when. You've become an expert on this house, holding in your head a detailed map of its quirks and requirements. This knowledge is valuable to the household, but worthless anywhere else. You've filled your brain with information that's entirely specific to this place, crowding out other knowledge, other memories, other versions of yourself. The concept of a day off has become almost abstract. Sunday afternoons theoretically belong to you, but in practice there's always something that needs doing, some task that can't wait, some expectation that you'll be available. You've learned not to plan anything for your free time, because it'll probably be interrupted or cancelled entirely. The disappointment of having plans disrupted is worse than having no plans at all, so you've stopped making them. Your day off is spent in a state of anxious semi-rest, unable to relax fully because you might be called back to work at any moment. The relationship between effort and outcome has become completely disconnected. You can work twice as hard and receive the same pay, the same treatment, the same indifference. Working harder doesn't earn you anything except more work, as you're seen as capable of handling additional tasks. You've learned to pace yourself, to work steadily but not eagerly, because eagerness is punished with exploitation. This is a survival strategy you've developed unconsciously, your body and mind protecting themselves by refusing to give more than absolutely necessary. The dreams you have when you manage to sleep deeply enough are strange and often about work. You dream about stairs, about buckets, about endless rooms that need cleaning. You dream about being late, about forgetting tasks, about disasters involving spilled soup or broken china. Even your sleeping mind can't escape the job, working through anxieties and rehearsing tasks while your body tries to rest. You wake from these dreams more tired than when you went to sleep, as if you've been working all night in some parallel dimension where the labor never ends.